The lecture hall at Arcturus Academy shimmered with holographic formulas drifting through the air like neon smoke. Hundreds of students scaled, feathered, silicon, and even spectral sat in neat rows, tapping away on their Omni tablets, and right in the middle of them all was the lone human, Elias Ward, a Terran exchange student, wearing a faded hoodie and looking way too relaxed for this class. Most of the aliens thought he was just hopelessly unaware. Professor Zeroth clicked its mandibles, a sound like metal tapping on glass. Now, it announced with that special kind of smugness only a tenured galactic scholar can have. We will proceed to the foundations of unified quantum numerics. This is the discipline that has stumped entire star empires. I assume our human guest will at least try to participate. The class chuckled. Elias just smiled and uncapped his pen. The assignment appeared in shimmering glyphs. Problem 17. Derive the zero flux inversion constant. Using axioms for through 12. Show all multidimensional work. A collective groan went through the room. Problem 17 was infamous, a rite of academic suffering, but Elias just flipped to a blank page and started writing, by hand. No holograms, no fancy calculators, just old-fashioned ink on paper. 40 minutes later, students started submitting glowing data modules, filled with calculations so dense they looked like encrypted code. When it was his turn, Elias walked up and placed a single sheet of paper on the professor's desk. Professor Zeroth blinked its many eyes. Where is the rest of it? That's it, Elias said calmly. The solution? Zeroth's mandibles clicked rapidly with agitation. It scanned the page, its expression shifting from confusion to disbelief, and finally to insulted outrage. This is wrong. You didn't even use quantum numeric indexing. You didn't include the 12-dimension variable tree. This isn't just incomplete, it's mathematically childish. The professor stamped the paper with a bright red fail. Snickers erupted from every corner. 1. Crystalline student whispered loudly. I heard humans still use primitive arithmetic. They teach it with rocks. Another one muttered. They probably can't even perceive the 11th logical axis. Elias didn't react. He just slid the failed paper back toward himself, nodded once, and said calmly, Professor, turn the page. A hush fell over the entire lecture hall. Zeroth narrowed its compound eyes. Excuse me? Elias leaned forward slightly, his voice still quiet but firm. He didn't argue or challenge. He just repeated, turn the page. The professor flipped the sheet over and froze. A long, tense silence filled the room. The back of the page wasn't blank, it was covered from edge to edge with incredibly dense, compact writing. Entire layers of multi-axis notation were folded into handwritten matrices. There were microdiagrams of spatial inversions and even corrections to the Academy's own axioms, and right at the bottom was a simplified proof of the zero flux inversion constant, solved using nothing more than basic human calculus. Zeroth's voice trembled. This is impossible. Elias just shrugged. It's just math. But Zeroth's antenna quivered. You bypass 7 dimensions entirely. You collapse a 12-axis expression into a 2-axis derivative. This shouldn't work. It should not be possible with linear maths. Terran mathematics is weird, Elias said casually. Sometimes, simpler is stronger. The class stared, their minds blown. One serpentine student whispered. He solved the problem in less than a page. By hand, muttered another. With a flat pencil, a third whispered, horrify. Zeroth tried to steady itself. No, you must have copied this from a Terran database. Check the timestamps, Elias replied. I wrote it in real time. And I can do it again, if you want. The professor ran the verification. The room lit up bright blue, authentic, original, human-derived. The whispers turned into stunned murmurs. For the first time in decades, Professor Zeroth was speechless. Finally, it managed to ask, Human, how did you see this solution? It violates 3 known laws of quantum numerics. Elias smiled faintly. That's the thing. Professor, Humans didn't grow up learning your math. We grew up discovering shortcuts. Because the universe never gave us the time to do things the long way. Zirl stared at him with a mix of outrage, and a full-blown academic crisis. Because the human hadn't just solved the hardest problem in the course, he had rewritten it, and this was only problem 17. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more. See you next time. The lecture hall at Arcturus Academy buzzed with an electric tension. Last session, a quiet Terran student named Elias Ward had shattered a foundational theorem with just a pencil and paper. Now, everyone watched him walk in, headphones around his neck, coffee in hand. Completely unfazed, even the usually rigid Professor Zirl seemed on edge. Its mandibles twitching nervously. Class, Zirl began, its voice cracking slightly. Today we examine problem 18. Considered unsolvable by all known methods, a collective groan rippled through the students. But the professor's eyes kept darting toward Elias. The holographic assignment materialized. Construct the temporal convergence identity across all 12 planes without collapsing the time-axis parity. Half the class had no idea what that even meant. The other half just pretended to. As the countdown began, the room exploded into a frenzy of frantic calculations. Tablets glowed with complex graphs, and equations piled up like collapsing skyscrapers. Dimensional maps twisted and failed. Elias, however, just sipped his coffee. He opened his notebook to a fresh page, cracked his knuckles, and began to write, slowly, smoothly, like an artist sketching, not a mathematician solving. Professor Zirl watched with quick, nervous glances. It had personally struggled with problem 18 for decades, watching every published attempt fail under its own weight. How could a human, whose species was new to the galactic stage, even attempt it? 30 minutes later, a loud clatter broke the silence. A crystalline Vroxy student had dropped its tablet. Impossible, it whispered. This problem, it breaks causality. Nearby, another student was actually crying from sheer despair. Elias just yawned. With 5 minutes left on the clock, he calmly walked to the front and placed his single sheet of paper on the lectern. Zirl stared. 1 page again. Elias just shrugged. Didn't need more. The professor picked it up with trembling claws. At first, Zirl didn't understand what it was seeing. This wasn't standard quantum numeric logic. It wasn't any known methodology. It was elegant, simple curves and clean, linear steps, each one flowing into the next with a beautiful inevitability. Zirl's pupils dilated. This solution, it should collapse. It should fail by step 7. How did you stabilize the time axis? Elias pointed to a tiny note scribbled in the margin. Treat time like velocity instead of position. Humans do it all the time. Zirl's voice cracked. This defies every principle in the field. Elias shrugged again. Maybe the field is wrong. The hall fell silent, dead silent. No one had ever suggested such a thing at Arcturus Academy. Academic doctrines were sacred. Impossible, Zirl repeated, its voice barely a whisper. This rewrites half of quantum numerics. Elias chuckled softly. Cool. Want me to rewrite the other half? Gasps echoed through the room. Someone actually fainted. One student whispered in awe, "Is this what humans are like on their homeworld?" Another reply, "If this is the calm one, I fear the rest." Professor Zirl slowly sank into its chair. Decades of its life's work and none by a human and a single piece of paper. Elias Ward, the professor said quietly, "I owe you an apology. I mocked your primitive methods." Elias smiled warmly. "It's okay, Professor. Most people assume humans are simple until we show them otherwise." Zirl gave a deep, slow nod. "Would you consider co-authoring a paper with me? This solution will shake every scientific institution in the galaxy." Elias paused for a moment. "I'll do it," he said, "but on one condition." Zirl blinked. "What condition?" A grin spread across Elias's face. "Turn the page," and when the professor did, there was a sketch of problem 19. Already half solved. The entire class screamed.